You've all been asked for the updated tier list for this newest update, and it is finally here. Sorry this took so long. I've had to do a ton of using different elements, and so much has changed with this newest update. But before I want to do that, I want to ask you all if you'd like to see a new to pro series with a challenging twist. If so, comment that down below on what a cool challenge idea would even be. Okay, so here we are, and to preface this, the meta is completely different now, and to represent that, I removed the SS tier and the F and E tier, as all elements are actually rather close to each other when at peak mastery, meaning where before like rares like nature and epics like ice and smoke couldn't clear Angel Sanctuary hardcore, they now very much can. Okay, and to start off, air is going straight into D, and not much has changed. Yeah, air is still in D with that one. Angel is actually going into B. Now, Angel is going into B even despite all of its buffs and nerfs and all of that. It's still in B. It's been just changed a little bit, and Angel gets better the better swords you're using. So I'm going to go ahead and throw Conx in like right now at S tier. So if you're using Angel and Conx, your Angel, you can assume your Angel's like about S tier. And next, the sword for Doombringer is going into A. If you're using like Angel and Doombringers, your Angel's probably like an A tier-ish. That's the best way to think of Angel, is the better swords you get, the better it's going to be. Next is Bunny, and Bunny has gotten buffed and people hype Bunny up like crazy, but I still view Bunny as kind of wonky to use. It's still very sluggish to use. The moves don't feel good. It does a lot of numbers, but every element is doing a lot of damage numbers right now, so therefore I'm still putting Bunny into B. I still think Bunny is not all that. I think it's getting a little overhyped right now. It's not all that. For Dragon, Dragon's going in A, not quite S tier, but Awakened Dragon is probably a smidge under S tier. Awakened Dragon is very good. It's doing a lot. It does so much damage. It's so versatile. It can clear fast. It clears boss fast. Its passive is good. Like, everything about Dragon right now is really, really good. Earth and Fire are both going into D. And like I said, even though everything's mastery still got raised, rares are still the worst, mostly because rares still don't have the utility that a lot of other elements use. Like, you know, the rares won't have as much splash damage, the cooldowns might not be as good, most of them don't have M1s, most of them are kind of weird to play. They're kind of the beginner elements still, even though the mastery did get raised. They're still kind of the beginner elements, so I'm just going to go ahead and get Water out of the way as well. And Fool's Phantom, probably the worst. It's probably the worst one. It's probably the worst one. This is actually probably the order in which I would have. No, Water was actually... It kind of looks like that for me. Next is Galaxy, and Galaxy after all these buffs is crazy. Galaxy is one of the best elements in the game right now. It can clear from distance. It can clear fast. It can do crazy boss damage now. The Black Hole just got buffed, and its other move, its fourth move, got buffed as well. And it's insane. Like, the Black Hole, to put it into perspective, you can use your Black Hole, and by the time the Black Hole goes down, you can then put up another. What that means is you have a constant like 36,000 tick on regular corrupted or regular Galaxy, just going off all the time. That's insane. If it's corrupted, you have this 70,000 just tick going off all the time, because the Black Hole has no downtime now, which means you can use like Black Hole, then use your beam move from super far away, use your Black Hole again, use all your other moves, use your beam, and just keep like looping that to get insane damage with Galaxy. It's definitely one of the better elements in the game right now. Next is Gravity, and Gravity got buffed pretty exponentially. The numbers on Gravity are insane. It is now one of the best legendaries. I still don't think it's ahead of Dragon. One, because Dragon's transformation is pretty good right now. Dragon just does pretty good numbers. The Awakening on Dragon, all that, I still think it's below Dragon in terms of legendary, but it is probably the second best legendary, and it's kind of close. Next is Ice. Ice also got a pretty big buff. Ice can do some pretty big numbers right now, but I still think it's in C. I'm not gonna overhype Ice here. Ice is just still not very good. And I say this mostly because I'm not so much judging elements anymore based on the amount of damage they do, but instead on the utility that they bring. And I feel like Ice it's one of those elements that just feel very poor to play. It's in the same box with like Gravity in that respect, is even though it still is now doing a lot bigger numbers, everything's doing bigger numbers, and it feels kind of shitty to play. Next is Infinity, and Infinity did get a few buffs, but I still don't think it clears Dragon. I was testing Infinity out. I've seen some people hype up Infinity like crazy, like it's one of the best mythics in the game. I was testing Infinity, and I was testing some of these other elements like back to back, clearing with both of them, hitting the dummy with both of them, seeing how fast I can clear bosses with both of them. And it's like Infinity feels like right now like a one trick kind of like element. Like you just bank completely on your hollow purple. dealing like most of your like damage, and that's kind of it. It's still kind of slower at clearing. It still just doesn't feel great. I'm putting it in A. It is, in my opinion, the second worst mythic behind one other. For Kit, Kit is going into S. It's still an S, even though it has come down, or Kit hasn't gotten nerfed really or anything like that. What has happened is everything else has come up to meet Kit and mostly past Kit as well. So it feels like Kit's worse now. It really isn't any worse than what it used to be. And Kit is still in S tier for me. It's below Galaxy and a few others that I'll get to. But Kit is still so good for 90% of the game. Like, I'll tell you, levels 1 through 230, Kit is probably still the best element in the game. It's just now in the end game, Kit kind of drops off really hard. It just doesn't do enough boss damage. It is really bad against the boss. Regular Kit is. And for that, I'm putting it at probably the back of S, behind a few of these other ones. Next is Krampus, and Krampus I'm putting in between here, but you can argue Krampus up. What's really good about Krampus is Krampus has 3 of its moves are like damage over time moves. So you hit them and they do damage over time. What this means is you can use these 3 moves and like swap the swords and use swords. You can use these 3 moves and like just focus on your M1 and dodging. You can it's pretty versatile in that sense. And so I think Krampus it's very good right now. But it's not only just because of that. Krampus could always really do stuff like that. It's just now the numbers are bigger too. Next is Lava, and the fall from grace Lava has had is insane. Lava used to be the best legendary. Everybody remember that. The fucking donut move was busted, but now it's easily the worst legendary. It's like they kind of just forgot that, like, because since Lava was the strongest, they just didn't like buff it. Like, they buffed everything else, and now everything else has kind of surpassed it. So it's kind of sitting as currently the worst legendary, and that's just mostly because it hasn't, I feel like, gotten the same like treatment that the other ones have. Maybe it'll be next, maybe an awakening. That would be pretty cool. I don't know though. I don't know, but Lava right now is probably like the worst legendary is a good way to think of Lava. Next is Light and Lightning, and I think these are really interchangeable. I actually believe Lightning can do more damage at max, and it does have the passive, which helps it, but Lightning feels very sluggish and slow to play, and Light is going to be able to clear faster than Lightning in a lot of cases. So I feel like I'm going to put them like this, but this is interchangeable, and I mean, maybe if you take into account Lightning's passive move, I think I'll give it to Lightning just because of the passive move. Just because it's got the passive, and I have maxed the passive, and it is pretty good. I do like Lightning's passive. It's not as good as like Dragons or Galaxies, but it's pretty good. Next is Nature, and Nature's still like the best like starter element in the game just because of its M1, just because it's a solid element. And after this buff, Corrupted Nature does like 67,000 damage per M1, and anybody can get their hands on Corrupted Nature if you just spin enough. Like, it's pretty easy to get. So you can easily have an element that's doing 67,000 per M1 in Angel Sanctuary. I was clearing Angel Sanctuary hardcore with Nature. It was insane. And that just goes to show that everything is very like strong now. Like, even though like S is all the way up here and B is all the way down here, it's actually not that far of a gap. You can clear Angel Sanctuary with Bunny now pretty easily. Next is Phantom, and this one's kind of had a fall from grace as well, like Lava. I think Phantom's the worst mythic in the game right now. I think the hype for Phantom is pretty low. It's just not good. Everything else has gotten past it. It feels very slow to play. And when I use other elements and I come over to Phantom and I use Phantom, it just like, it is so slow. It's unreal. I feel like I need to be using Swords with Phantom for me to want to use this at all. It's like Phantom is like, it's just barrage and step. And that's kind of like all Phantom's got going for it. Its M1 is kind of like slow and doesn't deal all that much damage. It's really, Phantom just boils down to barrage and step. And its passive is terrible. Phantom's passive is genuinely awful, but I'm going to save that for the passive video, which I have coming out very soon. I'll talk more about that. But its passive is, it's so bad. Like, next is Reaper, and I'm putting Reaper also in S. Reaper's passive, I think, is pretty actually good compared to Phantom's. Reaper's passive allows its skeletons to just stay up longer. You can keep your skeletons alive almost indefinitely, at least playing through Angel Sanctuary with Reaper now and the passive. It's very hard to let them die, which is nice. On top of Reaper having Awakening, again, it has a passive. It just has the skeletons, which do so much damage. You can spawn your skeletons in and then swap rings to get like more magic damage. You can do that. its it's not its awakening, but its transformation just got buffed a little bit. Reaper has gotten buffed like every single update, it's gotten buffed, and now it's in a state where it's probably the strongest boss killer in the game. Now the trade-off on Galaxy or Reapers, it feels very sluggish and slow to play because most of its gameplay is revolving around its skeletons. But even then, a lot of the awaken moves still will allow you to clear pretty fast. So, I mean, Reaper's really in a very good state. It's a very good element. Next is Smoke, and Smoke, really, there's not too much to say about this. It's about on the same tier as Ice. And for Darkness, the newest legendary that just came out, I would say after the gravity buff, it's a little below gravity. Darkness is good. It's got some cool moves and some cool utility, like being able to draw the boss, like draw boss damage and draw like the boss hits. That's very cool. But it's hard to explain. I don't want to call it like mid because it's a cool element, but it's a legendary, you know what I'm saying? And I think it fits perfectly in with the legendaries. It's like, it's pretty decent at clearing fast. It's pretty decent at killing bosses. It can just do everything kind of okay. And it's got a really cool mechanic with its final move of how you can actually get boss attention. I really like that. I think that's cool. And lastly is Solar. And I think Solar is probably about right here. It's probably about right here. And to preface this, to better explain this, I think Conquers are still the best, but I think it's very, very close now. Before, Conquerors were better than everything by far. Now that gap is it's much, much more narrow. And you got to think of this as like, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, before Kit was like the best, and then there was this massive gap, and then you had the second best element. Like, it was genuinely like Kit was like twice as good as everything, and then the next best element. But now everything is really, really close. That's a good way to think about it. Like, there's not huge discrepancies here. Like in this top four, I think you can alter any of these four and the tier list is still fine. Like, it's still valid. Like, you can put Krampus up here and I would still agree with your tier list. You know what I'm saying? It's mostly like a lot of preference based, a lot of like slightly different mechanics and playstyle based, and that's about it.